I'm here early. Let me tilt my microphone up. Make sure I'm audible here. There's one person here. Can you hear this? There's two people here. Right on. Sound off if you're in the comments. If you're here early, what have you. Got a busy background because I got crap moved all over the house from the stuff I've recently helped my aunt move. She moved into a house that's like 400 square foot smaller. And so all of her crap that didn't fit, we basically took to our house, and that's been a mess because my wife's got a tennis elbow. I've got a torn MCL, so it's getting like 1 to 2 hours of work done and then being exhausted, and then 1 to 2 hours of work done and then being exhausted. Anyways, today I want to talk about improvised weapons in RPGs, in modern settings, in historical settings, of course. I might retroactively name this like HEMA Instructor talks about. Those videos seem to get views. I don't know. Even if the titles are a little cheesy, I don't like the appeal to authority thing. Because lots of HEMA instructors don't know anything about actual combat. I don't think I know much about actual combat. Let's, I guess, start historically. Let's start with things that, and the cool thing about historical improvised weapons is that most of the stuff they would have had 400 or 500 years ago, we've still got today, with some exceptions. I'm going to keep waiting for some people to show up because I thought it would be cool to do this as a stream, get ideas, bounce back and forth, answer questions as they come up. I know I'm here a few minutes early. I just got my water and grabbed some random crap that I thought could be used as an improvised weapon from the other room, and then popped in and started. All right, so no comments yet. Let's go to the classic glass bottle. Used glass wine bottles back then, not beer bottles, but I mean, this is maybe the traditional improvised weapon that you see all the time in bar brawls. And you'll see it used in two different ways. You'll see it broken over somebody's head. I don't want to spill beer everywhere, so let me make sure this is empty. Yeah, I had a couple drops left. Good beer. Not sponsored, by the way, but this is a fantastic brewing company. You'll see it used to break over someone's head. The problem with this is if your weapon breaks on contact, think about a tournament lance as opposed to an actual lance. The tournament lances are made to break on contact so that they take all of the force out. Prop weapons, this sort of stuff. A prop wall, a prop table that somebody's going to fall through in WWE. If it breaks on contact, it's probably not going to actually do that much damage other than maybe have a little bit of glass sharding. So the way I think you would use this, if you were going to use one, is break it on something first. Now you have sharp edges, and you can use it not as a blunt instrument, but as a shiv to stab someone. This is silly to me for a number of reasons. This is a slick, probably wet object that is now incredibly sharp in unpredictable directions. I could probably hurt the other guy. I'm going to hurt myself in the process. That's something to think about, right? Maybe your game doesn't have rules for improvised weapons in particular, but you can on the fly think, okay, he fails to hit with this. Well, maybe with a normal weapon, he would have just failed to hit normally. But with an improvised weapon, now instead of just missing, you're cutting your hand open on this sharp glass that you've created here. There's one idea. Another idea that is going to be pretty common through the modern day and historically. Here I've got a Chinese chef's knife, which is pretty similar to a lot of the cleavers and cooking knives that they'd have used historically in Europe and elsewhere. It's a square, basically a rectangle of metal that is sharp. And you can cut somebody to absolute pieces with this. I mean, these are made to cut through meat and made to cut through bone. And what are people made out of? They're made out of meat and bone. Hey, Zonalar, can you hear me all right? I mean, you're a little early, just yakking away. You're about 4 minutes behind. No worries, man. Let me know when you're caught up. So we can use this pretty much in all the ways that we would use a standard slashing weapon. Just it's very short. And obviously, being totally flat, we can kind of thrust with it, but we're not going to get much depth. So, yeah, go right ahead. Skip the intro, skip the yakking, as you should with any live stream. We can make pretty much all of our cuts. What I like about this is there's no real danger of my hand slipping up onto the blade. I can get a very firm, tight grip on it. I don't have to make these big telegraphed, powerful cuts either. I can make little shortcuts at somebody, and that's very effective. So yeah, this one I think is kind of obvious, the kitchen knives. But something of note is that cutting someone is not as likely to incapacitate them as stabbing them. This is why there are usually length limits on knives and not like width or sharpness or limits like that on carrying knives. Generally at about 3 inches or longer, you start getting into important organs and whatnot that you would like intact. This, though, can, of course, if you cut on the brow, cause bleeding into the eyes. That can make the fight a lot more difficult. If you cut somebody's nose, makes it hard to breathe. Neck, obviously, not a great spot to be hit in. Depending on where you hit, you got about 30 seconds to stop that bleeding. So, you give somebody a choice to hold that in and try to prevent the bleeding, or keep fighting you and end up with you both dead. This is something that happens historically. There's a few accounts of this, of rapier fencers getting stabbed through the neck, but because it's nothing immediately vital, they can keep fighting for a little bit. They kill the other guy, and then they drop dead. There's even one of the guy fighting with rapier one-handed, putting pressure on his neck wound, and he ends up living. He ends up winning the duel after being stabbed through the neck. This is one of my frustrations with some of the complaints about descriptions with hit points of, oh, there's health bullet. This guy's been stabbed in the neck, and he's just not dying. What, that he took 15 damage and he's got 30 health? Sure, why not? It does happen. It's not incredibly absurd. Now, if you swing way to the end of that and you're needing to stab somebody in the neck like 50 times, we're having a different conversation, 5e. But, so yeah. Kitchen knife, I definitely think, especially a modern kitchen knife that's really long, pointy, those kill more people than rifles every year in the United States. So that goes without saying, I think. Likewise, a medieval eating knife. So this is pretty much like a butter knife, but it is sharp, like a steak knife that you'd have at a restaurant. So, if you're not behind the kitchen, but, a fight breaks out at a restaurant in the modern day, or in the medieval times, if you've lost your dagger, but you've got a mess kit with you, as you would, or you're just a civilian, you don't carry around a weapon for your own purposes, or maybe it's illegal, you can definitely carry something like this around. And look how long that is. That could go all the way through my neck. I'm not a particularly big guy, but that can go well deep enough to cause me a lot of problems. So now, again, similar issues to the beer bottle, I don't have really anything preventing my fingers from riding up along the blade. So if I go in and I hit something hard, a rib or what have you, and it suddenly stops and my hand keeps going, I'm going to cut my hand to pieces doing this. Now I can brace it a little bit better if I put my thumb on the end of the weapon here, and then my thumb acts as the stop. So that is an advantage to the ice pick grip. Likewise, I can still cut and cut across the forehead. If somebody's arm is coming in to attack me, I can cut across it as I block, wrap, smash to the face, stab, stab, wrap, cut, stab, etc. Yeah, absolutely. It's not meant for fighting. It is an eating knife. It's meant for you to, for you to be poking stuff, cutting, not under duress with it. So it's not something. It's still very much an improvised weapon. It is not made as a fighting knife, but you could fight with it if need be. It's also just because of the mass, it's not going to be causing nearly as much damage. The hydrostatic shock of, displacing organs inside. Something Max and I did a video on a while ago, should spears and daggers do the same damage? And something Shadiversity says in his video is, assuming the dagger and the spear have the same blade geometry, well, okay, throw away the whole video because they don't, right? Assume this has the same blade geometry as a thing that's meant to kill somebody or an animal, but it doesn't. That's not what we see historically. Having mass there to push organs out of the way and split them apart and put them into places where they're not supposed to be is the purpose of a lot of the edge geometry of an actual weapon, compared to the edge geometry of something you're trying to eat with, which is just to separate two pieces, gently. If it takes you a little bit of time, no problem. Just like an axe, a felling axe. I don't have a felling axe with me right now, but imagine an axe, but it's heavier. It's heavy because logs don't tend to move a lot on you. People, on the other hand, they like moving. Especially if you're throwing an axe at them. Another thing that we could take mostly historically, but also somewhat modern. Walking stick. Got a rubber tip on this one. Historically, lots of them would have had just nothing or a little brass point. If you have a brass point on it, even better. The head on this one is kind of damaged. But a walking stick, not to be confused with a quarterstaff. A walking stick, this is pretty much coming up to shoulder height. Hey, Martin Webb. This is pretty much coming up to shoulder height. I can do some staff similar techniques. It's a lot faster for me to move it around, shove this into someone's face. I can pretty quickly arrive at this from standard walking position. I can shove the end in someone's face and then retreat to a fighting position, circle around, whack, use it to grapple with someone. If I wrap this around the back of someone's neck, I can step in, take them down, then start beating them while they're on the ground. All sorts of stuff. Somebody grabs a hold of your collar. You can use this to break that grip. And again, hit to the face. You could also take Paulus Hector Mayer's advice. And if you know how to use a sword, well, the stick is about as big as a sword is. He says a great way to practice swords, if you can't actually afford one, is find a stick that's about as big as a sword is. And you can use this basically like you would a sword. Classic improvised weapon is baseball bat. Yep. Yeah, hey, that too. This especially, even if you're not injured, can give you the image of this guy's attacking some injured guy. He needs a walking stick or a cane to move around. Cane, likewise, whole martial art built around using a cane. So you could even argue as to whether or not it's an improvised weapon, Bartitsu. On that note, how about the classic, the Three Stooges, Tom and Jerry classic, the rolling pin? I like the historical ones a little bit better, which are just a straight piece of wood. They don't have any moving parts. It is just a stick by any other name. And I think I have one laying around somewhere. Here, again, same thing as a baseball bat, but smaller. We can move this around very rapidly. Would it be doing a ton of damage? Probably not. Would you like to stand still and let me hit you with this? No, also not. And yeah, that's an important thing to note is if somebody shows up, to witness the aftermath and break things down, then yeah, and they do decide that it was defense. Obviously, if you're using this to be the active antagonist, as Martin Webb says, yeah, you're probably going to get jail time either way. But 12 months is a lot shorter than the case for premeditated murder. So even in that case, you can make arguments that it's a crime of passion if it's just something you happen to pick up. But yeah, you can fight with this pretty well. The criteria I'm looking for an improvised weapon is if somebody blocks it with their hands, is it still going to do damage to them? Yeah. Is it easy to use? Not too heavy. Doesn't feel like it's going to fly out of my hand. Well, it's got handholds. It's made to go into my hand. So, yep, there's 2 checks. How much martial arts experience do I need to be able to use it? I would say not much, really. I mean, you can just whack over and over again and probably cause some damage with this. How durable is it? Is it going to break after I use it and then I've escalated a fight without being able to finish it? That's why I don't really like these handles on here, because I feel like if I hit something in earnest with this more than a few times, my handles are going to break off. Likewise, though, I could just grab it here and no big problem. Let's see what else we've got. What else do we have going on here? Let's keep it medieval first and then get into the more modern stuff. So I've got big old steel gauntlet. How good of a weapon is this? Well, for one thing, it adds a lot of weight to my punches. If you imagine that, every weight class you go up, it's adding an extra pound or 2 to your arms. Well, here you go. Here's an immediate 3 to 4 weight class increase to your punches on their own right. The surface area is a little bit more spread out. You can make that argument. But I can punch pretty much as hard as I want without risk of breaking my knuckles. I don't really, let's see if I have any, I haven't done this before. This could be fun. Let's see if there's anything that I can't do with this. So I can throw the cross, straight right, pretty fast. Okay. Overhand right. Not really a problem there. Shovel hook. Yep, no problem there. Uppercut. No problem there. Hook to the body. No problem there. Hook to the head. This one is definitely the hardest. I feel the weight on my shoulder the most here. I feel like you could throw out your shoulder doing that pretty easily. But you can also tell the amount of power that's generating there. Ridge hands? Maybe a closed fist ridge hand. Yeah. Yeah, you could definitely do that. That works. Knife hand. I think that's even better than an actually, a normal knife hand, which is with just the padded bit of your hand. Yeah, usually the reason that we use the hook in combination with stepping off the line is because it's usually a counterattacking technique. If you just try to go straight down the line with someone with a hook, especially a right hook, I mean, your liver is way open on this side. Cross can come straight down the line and hit you. So yeah, this is to generate a ton of power, hopefully knock the guy out. After you dodge his attack, boom, I come across the line with this. That's the big issue with the gauntlets, is presumably the other guys are going to have an actual weapon. It's not that these are necessarily bad. It's that you need some decent martial arts experience. Yeah. Thank you, Conway, for joining us. I've also got this big bell on the end here, so we can have a much more powerful and much wider area to deliver back fists with really quickly and rapidly. So yeah, that I think that's a solid one right there, huh? Modern and historical, but the historical ones have a bit of an advantage. Belt. Historical belts were worn way longer. They like to flaunt material, especially around the 1500s. So you would wear one that can go around you and then have a good bit of length dangling off the end there. And I think the longer your belt, the better a weapon it is. So the problem with this is ease of access. Are you going to be able to take off your belt in time to use it as a weapon? I'm not so sure. Now, if you had an extra belt just laying beside you in camp, or you've just woken up and you haven't put yours on yet, there we go. Maybe this is the first thing you can grab. Now, a few of the things that we can do classically are blocking things this way, not bladed weapons, of course. It is thick vegetan leather, though, so, I mean, you might be able to block the actual arm of somebody attacking you with a weapon like this, and then wrap it up, break them down to the ground, start punching them in the face. Again, you have the wrapping your hand, sort of giving you some protection as you punch. You can choke with it. That, I think, is probably the best thing that you can do with this is if you've snuck up on somebody and you need to take them alive and the only weapon you have is a gun or a sword or something, weapons that aren't very good at this, you could undo your belt, sneak up behind somebody and choke them. And that's very easy to strangle somebody with a belt, basically just around the front and then cross your hands. And you can take somebody alive through that methodology. You also have the interesting thing I want to note with the historical belt, the end bit. They don't always have this nice pointy finial, but a lot of them do. A lot of them do have this brass tip. And when you have this, and I'm swinging this pretty slow so I don't whack the shit on my monitor or something else in here. If you can get this brass tip moving pretty quick, is it likely to cause a ton of damage? Probably not. However, something we often forget about weapons is we need not only to consider their effect, but to consider someone's reaction to the weapon. If somebody is swinging this at rapid speed at me, am I going to want to risk this going into my eye? Probably not. I would have to be a really committed attacker for this. This would probably be good at scaring off animals. Yes, exactly. Well, 10 hours, don't you mean like 34 hours? Because we're doing it Wednesday, right? It is Monday right now, right? I'm not crazy. Yeah, especially in the context of like you're taking a knight for ransom. A ransom is a lot more valuable. One, two, if you ransom them off, you probably don't have a whole noble family after you trying to get you killed for killing one of their sons. So yeah, that's that's something to consider for sure. Belts, interesting concept. A practice sword. Leave this in the medieval period because, yeah, it is the modern period and I do have one, but something you're much more likely to find in the medieval period, Renaissance period, obviously. Basically, it's a sword, but it's blunt. How good is a sword if it's blunt? Not great. However, there is one technique with a sharp sword that we can do with a blunt sword that doesn't change it at all. Mordschlag. If we hold a blunt sword like this, we basically have a really skinny pickaxe, war pick here, and a itty bitty mace here. This is something we see in a few different treatises. If you've done any earnest research on this, you've probably seen this happen. And the blunt sword's even better at this because I don't have to worry about cutting my hands up at all. So I can swing this around with impunity. I can even slide my hands up and down to give myself some extra power, extra reach. Boom, boom. And yeah, this is pretty gnarly. There's a reason this is banned in pretty much every tournament with full protective equipment. This is, yeah, this we could really do some damage with. We'd also likewise use it as a typical half sorting measure where I can use the weak, that is the longest end of my sword, as a parrying measure. So if attacks do come in, I can parry with them and then attempt to strike with the pommel, bang there, or punch in with the quillins to the eyes, to the temple, to the neck, even to the ribs. Downside here is this requires you to be pretty martially effective to do damage with a blunt version of a weapon. Because if we're just holding it as one holds a sword that doesn't know what they're doing, their hands are way too close together, they're not at the point of balance, and they're just swinging it around like a baseball bat, it's just a worse baseball bat. You will absolutely open up cuts. You will potentially knock the guy out if you hit him in the head. It's still not a terrible weapon, but, and nice thing, you got hand protection. But somebody can probably block this with their hands and just get hurt. And you might break a bone if you're swinging really, really hard, or if you get a lucky hit. We also have the spatulated tip here. Contrary to popular belief, is not to stop it from going in the eyes, to stop it from penetrating the body. But a side effect of this is this widened tip here. If you hit somebody on bare skin, there is lots of talk of, the friendly competition duels with these, where people are breaking nose, people are breaking, bleeding like profusely above the brow. So you can cause a lot of damage with one of these things. And then on the bottom bit, it's all just like a normal sword. So fantastic. This is actually a pretty solid weapon in its own right, which is why safety is so important when talking about HEMA classes. What about rope for an improvised weapon? Basically the same things I have to say about the belt, and the additional benefit of if you can lasso somebody, that's fantastic. Somebody from my hometown of Duncan, Oklahoma years ago lassoed a criminal in the parking lot of a Walmart, to tell you the kind of Southern we are. So yeah, if your character is good at hauling steer and driving cattle, a rope can be a great improvised weapon. If you can't stand, you pretty much can't fight. So if you can get a lasso out of that, wrap that around somebody's feet, pull their feet out from under them, fantastic. Otherwise, just see what I mentioned about the belt. If you've got time to work the rope, you can make rope into all sorts of stuff, improvised flails like monkey's fists and stuff like that. I believe if you give it some kind of tip, basically make it like a flail of some sort, I think on its own, using it as a whip, if it doesn't have a tip, it doesn't have the kind of, like if we're talking like hemp rope, hemp or jute, plant fibers, they don't have the elasticity that leather does that makes a whip function, that has that sort of, it extends at the end and then contracts at the crack. I'm not positive on the physics of how a whip works, though. Good question. Let's set this down. I don't have a frying pan with me. All my frying pans are dirty. I haven't done dishes recently. Well, I have, but we cooked breakfast today. A frying pan, I think, is a pretty bad weapon. It's really heavy. It's really, really slow. If you sneak up on somebody entirely unaware, like the belt situation, then yeah, you wham somebody in the back of the head with a frying pan, a cast iron pan. Yeah, you could very well kill them outright. You'll definitely knock them out. But they are really freaking heavy. If you have ever tried to swing a pan at like a cast iron pan in earnest, it's just not happening. Modern day, a stainless steel pan that is really lightweight, and we could swing around like crazy all day. Now we're talking. That I think would be a pretty good weapon there. We mentioned the stick earlier. Let's talk about it again. Pretend this isn't a mace. Pretend there's nothing there. and I've just got a stick. What can I do with a stick? Well, we can do pretty much all of our normal things. And likewise with the cane, Hapkido has whole sections of using a short stick. Fiore talks about using the baton, the officer symbol, to defend yourself against dagger strikes. A dagger strike is incoming. You deflect, you step to the side, hit him in the head. It could be argued that a stick is not even really an improvised weapon, but is just a good weapon, presuming you pick up a solid piece of lumber and not some crappy stick that's going to fall apart the instant you hit somebody with it. Stick, solid weapon. You'll probably need a few hits to actually knock somebody out, but you can defend yourself with it effectively. You've got pretty much all of your single-handed sword defenses. So blocking here, 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 here. They all work. Our hand is unprotected. That sucks. Stick something heavy on it and you got a mace. Just as universal as the stick is the heavy fist-sized rock. Wonder how good it would be to add one's weight to one's punch, or for throwing. Could it dissuade an animal or an assailant? We have a litany of sources about throwing rocks, especially as siege protection. So, from a castle wall, dropping rocks on people climbing up siege ladders or just at the bottom attacking the gates. And just throwing rocks. Fiore, I believe, Fiore de Liberi, 15th century Italian swordsmaster, he suggests carrying around a sack full of rocks to defend yourself wherever you go. And he says that's worked for him before. He's just taking a good rock and chucking it at people. It's really, really effective. Against animals, I would presume it's not for nothing, especially if you hit them. Good point about packing your fist to make it a more solid object. The classics are like a lighter or a roll of coins. So if you have a rock that's about that big, do I have anything like that? Yeah, I have a lighter right here. If you have like a lighter, a little bic works better because it makes you can close a more natural fist around it. But this is a solid steel lighter. So if you have this, your fist is going to compress less as you punch with it. You're still at risk of breaking fingers, but here's what I always say. If you punch somebody in the head so hard that you break your fingers on their jaw, you're probably winning that fight. So it's not as big a deal as some people make it out to be. So yeah, that's absolutely a thing. If you could find a rock, palm-sized, yay big. You don't want it to be too spherical because then you'll end up making a fist like this, which is just bad. Yeah. We have there's a historical account of a guy who beat somebody to death. He was a cutler's servant, and he beat his master to death with a bag of knife blanks. He won the case in like the 1400s, which is kind of crazy for a servant beating their master to death to not only not get hanged, but win the case for two reasons. Pretty much everyone else in the town went, yeah, that master was an asshole. It was no surprise. And second, they figured if it was like premeditated, if he didn't just snap, wouldn't he have taken one of the knives out of the bag and then proceeded to stab him with that? So it was clearly a crime of passion. It's interesting how they were considering things like that even 500-600 years ago. Yeah. I mean, Fiore would mention something very similar. He had his knife on him, and he says he would break a branch off of a tree. He recounts a self-defense situation he was put in where 2 or 3 people run to attack him, and he stops the first man by throwing a branch at him, picks up another branch, blocks the second guy's weapon, stabs him with his dagger, then hits the third guy if there was a third guy. A book. We do see that in John Wick, don't we? He beats the guy to death with a book. And it takes him a really long time, but it does work. And I think basically you'd have the same issues, is that it would be a really ineffective way to do that. I have one of the many fights I was in high school. I was suspended for beating someone with a book bag. I didn't even knock him out. I think the bag, if it has like any room to give, it gives you too much padding. Yeah, the kid was bruised and bloodied. I don't even remember what started it. But yeah, it did not have the oomph that you would expect it to have. Am I out of historical stuff? Not quite. Hi, Spit. I don't know if I know you, but good morning. I think that pretty much covers it for medieval stuff. I mean, it doesn't cover it, but these are just some ideas for your games. Let's move on to some modern stuff. In the modern day, we've got some great stuff, especially if you're around mechanics, if you're around a construction site, if you are just handy and have this stuff on your own. How about 18-inch breaker bar? I'm assuming the ratchet is going to pop off about the first bit, so no flex head flail for us here. But an 18-inch solid steel breaker bar, if a stick is a good weapon, this is a phenomenal weapon. Refer to what I said about more people being killed with kitchen knives every year than with rifles in the United States. I believe more people are killed with blunt objects as well, particularly claw hammers. I don't leave the claw hammer out because, let's get original. Let's give other things some good options here. I mean, look at this old Pittsburgh. It's got a good handle on it, good solid choke. This thing's never going to break. I don't care if you block this with your arm. I don't have to hit very hard to break your arm with it. Yeah, you could seriously kill somebody with this. Fantastic weapon. You don't have to do anything with it. You pick it right up. If you have pretty much no experience, you can just sort of beat and hack away with it. Fantastic. That's a good one. Religious objects. This depends on the cross. This depends on what you're fighting. You're fighting zombies, vampires, pretty great improvised weapon. Absolutely. I think one of the classics is a chair. Good to keep someone away, but not really a weapon, I suppose. Got a chair. Folding chair right back there, as you can see. That's a plastic folding chair with metal limbs. I think it would make a really terrible weapon, even just trying to keep somebody away. Wooden chair, though, or, full steel folding chair, WWE style. Yeah, I think that'd make a pretty solid weapon. I mean, there's a reason they have banned actual legit chair shots in the WWE because everybody was getting brain damage from doing that. It seriously injured people. So, yeah, really solid. You can use the feet of the chair. If you imagine this is a foot of a chair, you can hold the sort of middle supporting bit and keep somebody at bay. Yeah. Let's keep talking about that. So we've got here, if you hit somebody in the head cleanly enough with this, how destroyed do we need the brain to be? Is it a little spot inside the brain? Is it enough damage? This is not going to get stuck either. We can deliver good follow-ups. Now, for multiple opponents, this is a problem. We could pretty readily. I wanted this image because, we have like a classic corporate wants you to find the difference between these two images. They're the same image. And you could, given a little bit of ingenuity, take a piece of hardened steel, strap a handle to it. You have a buckler. The zombie / crackhead / individual is coming towards you. You shove this in their mouth. Second zombie's coming at you over here. You beat their brains in or whack their jaw off so that they can't bite you. You come back, start assaulting this one. You have the shield to hit. Whenever you want to bash with the shield, that's another thing I wanted to mention here. You'll see it almost always portrayed as this. This is not going to do a whole lot against anyone. If I turn it here, though, I've basically turned this into a blade of sorts where I can punch here, focusing all of that force onto a tiny area. You know, if I wanted to throw a plate at your head, would I throw it at you this way? Or would I throw it at you this way? I'll throw it at you this way. Likewise, we can swing, open up cuts across the brow, as I mentioned, or the nose. Yeah. Yeah, or angle iron fence posts for like a barbed wire fence that, you know, they'd be about yay height, about shoulder height. If you get one of those out of the ground, yeah, you've got a really good beaten stick. I don't have such a thing just laying around. I'm not that nuts. Drill. How about a drill? Would this make a good weapon? I think that is a red herring. It's not going to be, I mean, you're going to pretty much stop at the moment that you hit anything. But we've got a hardened steel bit here. If you can throw a halfway decent punch, now you've got a drill bit at the end of it. I think that's pretty solid for a zombie apocalypse, don't you? Especially if you had like a crazy masonry bit or something. Boom, straight through the front of the skull. If it's early on and, you know, the bone's not soft yet, step to the side, throw that hook, boom, straight through the head. yeah. Have your battery as a rock. If it's a lithium battery, you could even probably turn that into like an improvised explosive. Don't make improvised explosives in your country if it's not legal to. That's not a thing that I would know exactly how to do with one of these, but I just know lithium batteries like to burn and firefighters hate them. That'd probably do you some good. How about a steel toe boot? Now, this one obviously is going to require you to have some martial arts experience, especially in the event of a zombie apocalypse, because you're going to have to be able to hit those high head kicks, which I can do a lot better on my leg that I've torn an MCL on, paradoxically. But yeah, if you can deliver that kick to the jaw head area with a steel toe boot against a conscious opponent, they will quickly become unconscious. The boot, of course, is going to slow you down quite a bit. Likewise, you can just take the boot and throw it or use it as any sort of beating instrument. Sort of all function for that. How about you've broken into a museum and you have a nice old World War II replica, but it doesn't have any ammo in it. Well, we have the classic pistol whip. Would this be effective? Yeah. This is something they used to teach explicitly. We even have folios of knights with early, 1400s, 1500s wheel lock pistols. Boom, boom. They miss their first shot. They flip it over and they're fighting in armor because now you basically just have a wooden club that you can hit with. And it's got this nice hook angle. So the force is straight on here. So yeah, that's pretty fantastic. Very short range weapon though. For anything else, if you break into the same World War II museum, alas, we don't have ammo and we couldn't manage to find our 1903 A3 Springfield with a bayonet on it for whatever reason. Maybe some other survivors ran through and already took the bayonet. The museum curators are on another part of the floor defending themselves with it. They didn't think to grab this. You can hold from the buttstock and shove forward. Use it as if it has a bayonet to keep people at bay. That's solid metal. You wouldn't want that thrust in your face or anywhere else. Or we could use it a bit more in its actual weaponized capacity here as basically a really effective baseball bat. We've got a metal butt plate here. We can really generate a lot of force here. Even from front position, pretty quick to snap that across, beat with it. Yeah, like a lacrosse stick. Yeah, just like a lacrosse stick. Put this away. If you had the means and time, you could snap the end off of a fencing foil and have a small sword, effectively, just a sharp spike. This gives you hand protection. It gives you a bit of reach. You can't really block it. It's not going to be very effective against arms and whatnot, but in the event that you're going for the head, a sharp spike like this, very easy to move around. Now, you'll have to worry about it getting stuck, of course, but remember, an epee, a fencing foil, it's basically just a small sword that doesn't have a sharp bit at the end of it. So if you could somehow find a way to break this off, well, there's a reason that we wear 900 Newton jackets and fencing masks, and it's not just to protect us against the blunt sword, it's to protect us in case it breaks and becomes a sharp sword. So there's an idea I just come up with. What else do we have? What else do we have? Dude, ladders. His use of ladders is hilarious. Metal pipes as well. Just like the ladder scenes are so iconic, though. I mean, see, he used them similarly to a chair, which is realistic. Though when he sets them up and like uses them as obstacles to fight around, it's ridiculous and awesome. I don't think it's practical, but I mean, you do have stuff where you can swing, a 10-foot ladder around, use it as a weapon, use it to entangle people, get them in the way. I think that's somewhat viable. Little stuff, bit drivers. This is just a little pocket screwdriver. Got a little magnetic thing, and then it holds the bits in here. So let's assume you weren't actively screw driving something, and you had it just in that format. Wouldn't be very effective at killing anyone, but at pain compliance, you'll often see down here in between the wrist bones. Yeah, that sucks. In the neck, obviously, right behind the ear is a spot that really hurts. The temple, clavicle, sternum, up underneath the ribs. You can really get somebody to move away from you. And if you can generate space, then what can you do? You can start throwing punches and whatnot and start making stuff fall over with your sheer force. So yeah, not a super effective weapon, but as a tool to assist you in getting out of spaces in the event that your opponent is capable of feeling pain. Not bad. Yeah, this would work in like an office setting. If you have to actually kill the guy, here's a stylus, something that's really solid, not going to break like a pencil. I think that is our John Wick approved weapon here. Again, we can put our thumb over the end to stop it from slipping out. And it is possible. There are spots on the skull that are thin enough. Yorks Brava has done a good video on this, where you can theoretically, if you pin somebody down, you can kill somebody with a pen or a pencil. Is it practical? Probably not. I would say what's a lot more practical is flicking this towards the eyes. Even if you're not going to hit the eyes, because those are such small targets and the guy's probably moving a little erratically, you can get the guy to blink, cover up, boom, go in for your takedown. So pin could work. Ties, yeah, there's a reason we can't wear ties in you're not wearing ties on a construction site, you're not wearing ties anywhere. If he's wearing a tie, that's a weapon for you. You can yank that down. You can choke people. You can cross collar choke. So you can just grab the guy's shirt and choke him with it. Where else? If you have a lighter, again, it's mostly going to be a pain compliance thing. But most people, if the guy's like trying to strangle you or something, you can get a lighter under him. They'll usually flinch, make some sort of response, do something to let you go there. Flashlight. You got a flashlight somewhere in the office? Well, all right, try fighting me here. Can you see where any of these attacks are coming from? Probably not. If you're blind and trying to fight, there's a huge disadvantage. I think this is probably useful for just scaring animals or people, I would say. So a non-committed attacker. Because I don't think the flames are super hot coming off of that. I think if somebody was committed, they could power through it. And it's really dangerous to you should the flame actually get to the can. Well, you're the one holding that. Now, I think if you could like rig it up to some sort of thing, make like a bomb out of it. And again, I'm not recommending you do so. But in the like a fantasy zombie apocalypse, could be a thing, probably. So yeah, flashlight. Some people make like tactical flashlights that have crenellations, and you can. They're made to hit with. I have a couple of them. Those are less than improvised, though. Is why I don't have them here. I mean, sort of any sort of cabling. So headphone cables. You use as a garrote, especially those nice braided cables that probably aren't gonna snap if you hold them tightly around somebody's neck. That would be a useful one if he's not wearing a tie and you've really got to pull this guy off of someone. Just looking around here. What else? Similar distraction stuff. You got ceramic coasters. If you can just frisbee the hell of a ceramic coaster at somebody's head, it would get their attention. It would definitely be a distraction. How about some stuff I don't think would be a very good improvised weapon? Saws, like this little micro saw, even full-size saws. I just don't think a saw requires you to have pressure in there, and as soon as you're putting pressure into somebody, they're going to be pulling away from you. I don't think it would be you cut somebody up and make them bleed really superficially. It would be awful after the fight. Maybe that's a consideration. But as far as actually ending the fight, I don't think so. A vacuum cleaner. Big solid metal pipe, basically. Depending on the vacuum cleaner. Our vacuum cleaners at work always sucked. Literally and figuratively. They were basically all plastic. You could break the cables just by using them. Though, again, you got a big, solid gauge cable. You can strangle with that. You could use the end of the plug, throw that at people's faces. Be a good distraction. The rest of the vacuum cleaner, though, I mean, most of them are made of plastic. They're kind of heavy and awkward to swing around and use. But some of it I can see. Potted plant. Similar ideas to like a glass bottle. If you break it and you've got a shard of sharp ceramic, or you chuck it at somebody's head as a distraction before you run in and tackle them, yeah, could work. I just don't like the sharp bit. Now, if you're in a zombie apocalypse and you've got the time, you could break it and then, tear up your t-shirt, wrap some cloth around it. That way you have a sort of makeshift grip and you're less likely to slide down and cut yourself. We could work with this. I like ceramic because ceramic is very sharpenable. You can sharpen ceramic on other ceramic bits. You can use ceramic to sharpen a knife that you have that might be dull. So that's an interesting concept. I'm looking for other stuff. I'm just looking around for a thing like, not the first, second, or 10th thing I thought about, but we're digging to the 11th things. And we're an hour in, so we might be out. We might be out. Got a gourd. I don't know. If we filled this, if this was filled with like, I don't know, crazy like 80 proof alcohol or, 100 proof alcohol, splash that in someone's eyes, that would definitely suck. Probably temporarily blind them on that one. Kettle full of boiling water you got on the, you could have that in the medieval times around the campfire, or in modern day sitting around the, in the break room. I'm going to say I'm out. Improvised weapons in a sci-fi setting. We've got lots of like super high power battery stuff, right? So I think the like detaching your drill battery and turning it into an improvised bomb, like, way more viable than that. You see Terminator 3, where he's taking his, auxiliary power core out and chucking that behind him, and it's like a nuke. That's not even a weapon, it's just a thing. That was a cool part of that movie, just as world building, is like, this isn't even what's, a weapon on this thing, and it's still like nuclear bomb levels of devastation. That could be cool. That could be a cool concept there. Definitely electrical bits. If you're an electrician, you can really make things not do what they're supposed to do. And I think it's 400 volts, depending on the amperage you need to cross like a 6-inch gap of air and kill somebody on the spot. So yeah, that too. If you've got like any, rail gun, magnets, particle accelerators, maybe you've got like a conveyor belt that's just made to get things from one end of a ship to the other, and you can hack into it and make it go way faster than it's supposed to. Space Station 13, shooting cans at people at 100 miles an hour. Flame plume of your spaceship. Yep, absolutely. That's a cool one. These are less demonstrable. They're less. I can't show you these things, but you can use your imagination. So yeah, I think really what I wanted to get accomplished with this stream, with this video, is the idea of having various thoughts behind what your character might be able to pick up, 4D, co-create into existence. Throw peanuts at your opponent if they're allergic to peanuts. Yeah. That would be gnarly. The craziest Home Alone you've ever seen. But yeah, basically to like come up with stuff that your character could 4D into space, just some ideas here, or things for you to scatter around terrain for if you're the GM and you want to pop some stuff into a scene for your players to do who knows what with. And give you some ideas of the drawbacks of weapons. Often these aren't necessarily hard to hit the opponent with. They just won't do much damage. They aren't hard to hit your opponent with. They risk injuring yourself. They may do damage. They may be difficult to hit your opponent, yes, but they may have some other issues, like they're fragile, like they're likely to only work for a couple of attacks. This is one of the reasons I like weapon tags as a system, and it's why I'm designing mine in that way. We're getting dangerously close to cover yourself in oil. Yeah. Soap inside of a sock. No, coins inside of a sock. You basically had yourself a flail right there. I can't believe I didn't think of that one. Yeah, that's a classic. Man, you can look up prison videos of like crazy stuff. I mean, guys taking, Jolly Ranchers hard candy and melting them down, flattening them out, and sharpening them into little shivs. Guys breaking off the ends of toothbrush to sharpen them off into shivs. There's a reason prisoners aren't allowed to have belts or even shoelaces a lot of the time, because you can strangle or use weapons with those. I mean, especially like historical socks, because a lot of those, they're going up to knee or thigh height. So yeah, they're crazy. You get a really long flail with those. Historically, we see some really funny stuff, such as pin the guy down, and then if he's still fighting you back, have to call 2 friends over with a sack and put the guy in a sack. That one's probably a shit post, but there you go. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just some food for thought. I thought that was fun. Let me know what you guys think. I'll stick around and read a few more comments. Metal bits inside a bra. The little reinforced wire. Yeah, you could have pretty much any small little metal bit you can use to shove into someone's face, eyes, any of the vulnerable bits of the body. Will it kill somebody? Probably not. But again, like this, if they're pain compliant, it'll probably give you some space. So yeah, things to think about. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you next time.